You are listening to the Cattle Call Podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentech Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The Cattle Call Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cattle Call Podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. I am Jim Coppinger, your often loud but always charming host, and with me is...
Rocco.
Just plain Rocco. You don't need anything else. When you're Rocco, that's all you need. You just need the name. Everybody knows Rocco. And you don't mess with Rocco or you go swimming with the fishes. That's the way that is.
Exactly. And that's R-O-C-C-O, not R-O-C-K-O.
That's not nearly as intimidating. I think you should change it to the K. The K sounds like you're some big 1940s bruiser, you know, with big wide shoulders and a zoot suit going, "Excuse me, Mr. Luigi would like to have a word." I like that one better. All right, so what's our topic for today? We're talking about engineers in CAD, right? And what I call a missing part of their education. Today's topic really focuses, I think, on an issue that I've watched firms struggling with for the better part of 3 decades now. The ability, or more importantly, the lack of ability that new engineers and designers coming out of schools have with CAD systems. Listen, I have never worked for or with, as a consultant, a company that didn't run up against this issue with every one of their new hires. And it's a really frustrating issue on both sides of this coin. The company, right, ideally, they only want to hire people who can get their designs down on paper and in the computer, as quick and effectively. And, these young engineers and architects and designers, they want a job. Right? But they've never been taught how to work in a basic CAD environment. And I think that becomes even more of an issue when you start incorporating the modern needs for like 3D modeling and BIM, right, into that mix. Look, let me say straight out for everybody who's listening that this issue is by no means the fault of those EITs, right, or the junior architects coming out of the school. And I listen, I've heard a bunch of, grumpy old designers, old guys like me and Rocco, who, want to blame it on those lazy young kids who don't want to learn their craft. And that's just not true. All right? The fault here, I think, lies with the universities and the colleges who aren't willing to take the time to introduce computer-aided design as more than just an elective class in their curriculum. It's not that this next generation of designers don't realize or that they don't want to learn, effective CAD skills. It's that they really just don't get the opportunity to learn it. Right? I think the overall answer at the collegiate level seems to be, you'll learn that on the job. And I imagine that the folks who say really silly things like that are the same people who post, quote unquote entry level positions, that say there's a requirement of 10 years experience and a PE license. It's insane. So Rocco, what do you hear from our client base on this? I mean, is this still a big issue out there, or do we see that more recent graduates are more comfortable using CAD now than they were a few years back?
I think it's still a complaint that you hear, but they learn to find a way to work with people, because it's like they have no choice, and our field, the industry there's been a shortage, in finding qualified talent. So they're willing to accept the lack of talent in some ways and bring those people up to speed because they just need the help. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. I think you're absolutely right. Like they say, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. People will always find a way. Companies have been dealing with this for decades and making it work. It just annoys me and it frustrates everybody involved because it's not the right or the best way to do it, I think.
It's a level of acceptance.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, exactly. And like I said, it comes back to, that concept of, learning on the job, right? And I think that's a myth that everybody in college seems to get regarding their CAD skills, right? And the truth is, it's almost impossible to land an actual design job in the modern workplace without some type of rational CAD skill. Look, the truth is that, while you're in school, they taught you and you learned how to, you can calculate the Darcy-Weisbach factor for hydraulic flow rates in a channelized flow system, and you need that info.
What is that?
Huh?
Can you explain that to me?
Can I explain that to you? Yes, it's actually the hydraulic flow rate through a storm and sanitary analysis structure to see how quickly the back pressure builds to push it. I don't know. I'm making that up. I have no idea. It is actually a thing. It's a type of hydrologic routing method. I'm familiar with it, but no, I don't understand what it is. But look, at the end of the day, right? You can calculate all of that, but if you can't draw a pipe of the correct size on the drawing, you're pretty much useless to the company who's looking to hire you. Now, look, even if you're like the best interview in the world and you graduated at the top of your class, right? You're still gonna struggle to land that first engineering job, right? And then when you do, a really difficult thing for these young designers is gonna happen, right? They're gonna have to swallow something they're not gonna like. You're going to be a draftsperson. Yep. 4 years of college, ton of student loan debt, all kinds of work and sleepless nights, and you get to become a CAD technician. And that's where you're going to start. And that may sound completely unfair, and I'm sure it's really frustrating, but it's also necessary. Designers and engineers need to be able to communicate their design concepts effectively, and you cannot do that without CAD skills, right? In the modern design industry, and we'll talk more about this later, there's no such thing as an engineer having their own draftsperson anymore, right? Everyone has to draft their own designs. That's just the way the companies work now, particularly, after, downturns and economic issues. And that means that you're going to spend at least your first 2 years learning how to draw on the computer, right? So, and that ties into what you were saying, Rocco, right? So how do business owners react to this? I mean, do we see that they understand and accept it as a cost of doing business? Or are you finding that they're frustrated and angry at paying, an engineer to learn basic drafting on their dime?
Yeah, it's kind of like what I was saying before. I mean, they it's frustrating, but they feel like they have no choice. I hear it mostly from not even owners. I mean, I hear it from department managers, right? That they have to spend the time to teach these folks, and and some people like it. Some people take it as a privilege that they're able to do that, while others see it as frustrating. Well, now I have to dedicate my time to helping this person get up to speed, and but they don't have any choice. I mean, it's just what has to be done.
Yep. So and I think that the onus on this here is really on the schools for not seriously teaching this as part of their design curriculum. Look, as I understand it, the schools have two major reasons for not doing so, and honestly, I don't think I believe either excuse. But the first one is that they want to be software neutral and not force their students to learn a specific software that their new company may or may not have. They tell you, we don't want to endorse some private software company, and I'm going to call BS on that, right? Because I know for a fact, because I used to work for them, that most of these colleges also offer adult and continuing education courses using that exact software. All right, so why the issue with making your full-time design students use it if you're going to charge them to use it later on to learn what they need? Okay, so the second reason that I've heard is that they teach theory in the school and not practical application, right? They say it's more important to teach the why of design in school and then let them learn the how on the job. And again, I'm calling BS. All right, look, I'm not saying that understanding engineering theory isn't important. It's vital. All right? But if you can't practically apply that theory, it's meaningless, right? It's like being the world's most gifted guitarist, the greatest guitarist who ever lived, who never learned how to play a guitar. What the hell's the point, right? And I'm a little prejudiced here, I'll admit. I say, I see this as an issue that's coming from academic life, academics in the schools who, in my experience, often have very limited real-world experience. And they're setting policies that increase the vocational opportunities for other academics instead of teaching these kids what they need to get their jobs done or to even get that job in the first place. So
well, let me throw a curveball at you, Jim.
Okay.
So why, we tried to run a couple practical courses here at Zentech, and to be honest with you, they haven't done that well. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because people just don't, they feel like it should be taught in the schools and they shouldn't have to pay an outside consulting firm to teach their folks? Or why do you think that is?
Yeah, I actually see it as being kind of a realistic issue. In other words, what happens is that when we run these classes, we offer them, they're practical application classes in CAD from the ground up, and they're long because it takes a while to learn CAD, right? So these are like 40-hour courses we're offering across, multiple weeks. And what happens is that, the companies have to pay for them, right? They're paying for 40 hours of our time, which let's be honest, it's not cheap, right? We have mortgages and bills to pay as well, so we charge for our time. So they have to pay for it. Then they have to actually free these engineers who they're paying salaries for, who are supposed to be working on their jobs, right, to go away for hours and hours at a time. And I think it really comes down to, cost and time. And, like you said, these are entry-level people. And the idea, and I don't think I agree with it, but the idea that I see a lot on management is that these people, these entry-level people, are still unproven. Why am I going to spend all the money and time on this guy if I don't know if he's even going to work out as an engineer? So they don't want to invest in these lower level people. And I think that's kind of how that plays, So just my 2 cents on that one. It's a good question. So let me kick you back to the college thing. What did you think of my college rant? Do you think it's fair that the colleges are kind of structuring it this way to protect their own interest, or am I just being my grumpy old man routine again?
Well, I don't know. I haven't taken the time to dig into what colleges cover, but it almost seems like these topics are topics that are left for community colleges to teach, and they shouldn't be. People that are in architecture, engineering, construction, they're extremely bright people, and they're building tomorrow's roads. They're building the buildings that we and homes that we live in and work in and breathe in and sleep in. So they're not careers that should be taken as secondary level careers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think that enough emphasis is being put on truly on educating students.
Okay, I agree with that. So, all right, so let's take a break to hear from today's sponsor. And when we get back, we'll get into some of the ways that the industry is trying to combat the institutional CAD illiteracy of our collegiate system. All righty, folks, we'll be back in just a minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, Rocco, so we are sponsoring ourselves yet again today. What is it we want to talk about?
We're going to talk about me today, Jim.
No one wants to talk about you. Not even you.
Oh, fine. Let's talk about Zentech Tech Blocks.
Awesome. I like Zentech Tech Blocks. Zentech Tech Blocks are prepaid support hours that let you call on Zentech's experienced technical staff to address all your support questions, problems, help you with workflows and standards, really anything you need on the technology side. We're here to provide the support you need so that your most talented people aren't being dragged into helping everybody else in your company instead of working on the billable jobs that you need them focused on. All right. So Zentech Tech Blocks are available in multiple sizes. We sell them in 5-hour, 10-hour, 20-hour, and 40-hour prepaid support blocks. And if you're interested and you need that sort of help, Rocco, how do they reach out to us?
Yeah, hit up our website, zentechconsultants.net. give us a ring, 866-824-4459, or even drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
All right, Zentech Tech Blocks, the vital support that your people need exactly at the moment that they need it. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call Podcast, where I am busy actively chastising the entire post-secondary educational system today. All right, so we're discussing the lack of formal CAD training for young engineers and designers. And in this half of the show, I want to talk more about how companies are fixing the flaws we're left to patch from our, shoddy educational system. In the first half of the show, right, I warned our student listeners that they were facing a few years as a drafter after they graduated. But really, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The truth is there is no better way to become skilled at design than, to be responsible for producing construction documents on a daily basis. I really believe it gives you an insight to the practical aspects of building that you were probably not even exposed to in college. I'll give you guys an example, right? And it's one that I've used for years. I tell this story a lot. Poor Rocco's probably heard it a dozen times. I once worked with a recently graduated civil, EIT in engineering training, who, he designed a small pad site with a retaining wall that ran along the site property line, right? Leaving a little, a 2-foot grass strip between, the wall and the main access road for the site. Sounds perfectly legit and plausible, until I pointed out to him that he'd specified, one of those stack stone gabion wire basket type of walls. And he just didn't see any problem until I showed him, the detail of the wall, right? They're battered walls, which meant that, from the bottom to the top, it's an 8-foot gap, right? And then I asked him, so what's your choice here? Are we going to eliminate the main access road to the site, or are we just going to build on the neighbor's property, right? So, look, it's an honest entry-level error, right? But it's an error that he never would have made if he had even a basic CAD education, right? Because he'd have been the one drawing the details. He'd have checked that detail against the plans. He'd have seen that the full wall width was going to be 8 feet, and he would have completely avoided my, brutal mockery. So, Rocco, how many of our clients do you see that are engaging their new engineers in a CAD seat to begin? Are you finding it still to be a common practice or even a basic requirement at most firms?
You mean buying the software?
No, I mean actually making the engineers sit and do the CAD work. You know what I mean? Those young guys.
I don't know. I think it depends on the size of the firm. I see a mix. I don't think there's a consistent answer to that question.
Wow, you couldn't just give me a positive answer to support the point I'm making here. You couldn't just back me up a little bit and be like, no, Jim, you're right. Make it easy for me to give my rant.
We're all about honesty here.
Yeah.
So.
Right. No, it's fair. That's actually why I asked. Because like I said, I worked, a long time before we got, involved here at Zentech and doing our stuff. I worked in the private industry, and it was actually the point, particularly in the civil world, where we didn't use draftspeople. There were almost no independent draftspeople left. I think in a company of like 400 people, I think we had like 4 drafters. Everybody else was junior level engineers doing the actual CAD and design work combined. Because they need the experience, they need the practical application, and they have that theoretical knowledge of how to design. And just putting them all together works. And I have just seen more and more that people, the engineers, they don't design on paper anymore. And that's kind of where I think the colleges are still making the mistake. They're like, well, engineers do the theoretical work and the design and the approvals, and the draftsmen draw the pictures in CAD. That is not the way the modern world works. The design is done on the computer. The modeling software, the checks, the 3D, the hydraulic flow calculations, right? The structural analysis, that's all done on the computer. It's all done with CAD and BIM systems. And that's the problem. They're not getting taught how to do that. So I think that's still a thing. So just my 2 cents there. If that is the case, right? And then, like you said, some companies, maybe it's not, but I think that for a large portion of them it is. I think that, there's a necessity that goes along with that, which is formal training. And I think a big concern a lot of new engineers have, and rightly so, I think, is getting pigeonholed in that drafting environment, right? They're going to make them sit there and be a draftsman for a while. They're worried that if they become really good at that and they get stuck there, or at the very least, right, they learn just one or two design skills that they become experts at. These people went out of their way. They went to school to be an architect or to become an engineer, and they want to develop their skills. And a lot of times, even beyond the type of work that their company does on a daily basis, right? So if they wind up working for a residential home designer doing CAD work for a year or two, they're not likely to get a whole lot of practice in working with, structural steel placement or advanced road and traffic designs, are they? Right? So that's where I think it really becomes important for the companies to offer additional training to these folks that goes even beyond what their daily workload requires. Look, I've always been a believer in this. If you don't give your people a chance to grow inside your company, they're going to go looking for a different garden to grow in. Right? It's just the way that the human mind works. So, Rocco, what do you see companies doing in terms of formal training? Right? Are they actively offering courses to keep their employees developing, or do we see that market factors are really limiting what the companies are willing to offer their younger engineers?
It comes down to company size, right? I mean, obviously companies that are small don't have the budget to be able to do that. It's a matter of day-to-day survival. But large firms do invest in their people, and I say it often. It's not only about the money; it's about the satisfaction that people have every day, knowing that a company is investing in you and believing in you long term. It has big psychological impact on people's growth. So I definitely, in fact, I had a conversation with a large firm, someone with a large firm yesterday, who was developing, who's in process of developing a pretty involved training program for their staff. So it all depends, but it definitely see companies investing in that kind of training.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I'm going to talk about that kind of psychological factor in just a second, but. But what I guess what I was kind of asking you is, I know that larger companies, they're our clients, right? They work with us all the time. We provide training and so on. But are you seeing that it's more ad hoc, like, hey, this guy's pretty good and he wants to learn this, let him go to Zentech for that class? Or like you were saying, are more companies nowadays building and structuring an actual formal training process? Like, look, if you want to go from being a junior engineer to a project assistant, you have to take these 3 classes, right, and do these 3 things. You know what I mean? Are you seeing that in the work you're doing with these guys?
No, not enough of that. I mean, every now and then I run into situations like that, but not very often.
See, I think that's such a missed opportunity, for the companies and for the employees. I mean, it gives people, a set of goals and a path that they can follow, and you can be sure that they're getting the knowledge and the understanding that you need to be productive and efficient in your company. I mean, it's always boggled my mind that companies still don't do that. It's something that I've always struggled to put in place wherever I worked.
It takes time and money to put those programs together. And I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
But
I look at it as an investment in the company. You know what I mean? So again, it's just my own personal venue. It's something that I've always been a big fan of. So, and I think it kind of ties in. I think the mindset for the owners and the executives at a design firm. Yeah, I think that a lot of times they make the mistake of training their people only on what they are paying them to do today. Right, so I've run across so many people in my career whose attitude has been, well, we only do work of type A. That's what we do. So why am I paying to train these guys to learn, type B and type C work? Well, my answer to that is twofold, right? First, the skills that they learn, from the type B and type C processes, even if you don't do it on a daily basis, those can usually be adapted to the type A work you're doing, and it makes them more efficient, and it can garner you more profits. There's always better, faster ways to do things, right? You're trying to raise intelligent engineers. You're not creating automaton factory workers who do the same thing. Pick up piece, put piece in hole. Pick up piece, put piece in hole. That's not what we're looking for. All right? And I think secondly, I think that most companies, if you're saying, look, we only do type A work, that's because that's all you as the owner or the executive know how to do. If you invest in teaching your staff other types of work, other areas, you now have new potential business and profit lines, right? Look, I am a firm believer that no type of training or education is ever wasted. Don't alienate and frustrate your younger employees. Don't limit them to only what you personally can teach them. Invest in them, like Rocco was saying earlier, right? Invest in them as people, and they will bring that education and experience to bear on your company and on your company's bottom line. I truly believe, folks, at the end of the day, if you give your people the room to grow and improve and educate themselves, it's better for them as a person, it's better for you as a person, and it is absolutely better for your company and your profitability. Okay? So, like I said, and it kind of ties in, Rocco, to what I was asking before, they may not have a lot of formal training programs, but we run a lot of public training classes, right? We do like private sessions for companies and public offerings. But how often do you see those people coming back and repeating, right? How often do you see that people are in the company? And I know it's size based, right? Obviously, right? We already talked about that. But how often do we see people coming back and kind of learning along the same path, or people shifting to another learning path, right? Someone who's been focusing on civil roadway design, saying, now I want to learn piping design.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen that often, and I think it's unfortunate, like you're saying, but part of it comes down to being, we're like a disposable society now. You know what I mean? It's that short term, get it done for now kind of mentality. It's not thinking, down the road and not thinking through that whole process that you just outlined, Jim. Yeah. And I mean, to be honest with you, from one respect, it's from our business perspective, it's good in the sense that people are coming to us to learn a specific area of the software, a specific task. It's good for our business in the short term, but it's not good for anybody in the long term. Anybody's business, anybody's career growth. It's not good for Zentech as a whole. It's just not good all around. Yeah,
it's not good for the industry. I absolutely believe that, right? You've got to invest in your people, and it doesn't just mean training to do what I want them to do today. It's a long-term recipe for failure, if you ask me. But that's just my opinion, folks. So, all right, I will get off my soapbox now, and I will let all of our listeners go back to their daily lives. So thanks for listening in, folks, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody, today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.